Welcome to a Victim Bites Back special, and the week started at the Royal Courts of London, where there was a protest with hundreds of people, despite there being a tube strike where there would have been thousands of people, at the Royal Courts of Justice. And we need to complain about the state of justice in Great Britain at the moment. The system is broken, and many people agree with us, including the fantastic artist Banksy, whose brilliant artwork has been covered up by people who simply do not wish to see what he has to say. I explained to the crowds that Banksy's artwork was not just meant for the false allegations industry, but for freedom of speech as well. In fact, I think the Royal Courts of Justice, if they had any sense, would put a big plaque above his artwork saying, "The Royal Courts of Justice are not about this," or "are not like this," and then his artwork underneath. It would attract millions of tourists and would be a statement made by the justice system.
Thank you very much. I actually don't really have a proper question. It's about the Banksy illustration. Now, you may have seen the Banksy illustration, but I would like to explain this is not just for us. In fact, it's not just for me. It's for all the miscarriages of justice, but also the failure for people to be allowed to speak and make a protest, as we are doing today. Banksy's illustration is fantastic. It has, of course, been covered up, which is a little bit of a shame. I would have loved to have had my photograph underneath it, beaming in a rather sexy way I have. But the other point I'd like to make, which nobody has mentioned, but funnily enough, Michael Norton was the first person to point it out to me, the failure of defence lawyers. And when you think about it, they're never mentioned as we fight for justice and to get things overturned. But look at the 900 sub-postmasters, all of whom had expensive defence lawyers, not one of whom succeeded. It took a tiny little charity called Appeal, and I would heartily recommend, if any of you have done any donations, to give to the Appeal charity, because it's wonderful. But this tiny little charity worked like crazy and got Andrew Malkinson off after 17 years in prison for a crime that he did not commit. You look at what's going on in the Lucy Letby case, and what has not been mentioned was how completely useless her defence team was. Not one of them did any of the things that the media essentially has done since then. And that's exactly the same, all the post office case and everything else. So I think it's about time that spotlight was shone on defence lawyers who are fucking useless. Thank you.
The point I'm making about defence lawyers is very true. Take the Lucy Letby situation. Why didn't defence lawyers find out all the medical information about insulin and air embolism and all that and have presented it to the jury? Had they done so, which they had to do so, surely the jury may have decided she was innocent and not guilty. Defence lawyers are nearly always incompetent, lazy, or useless, or just simply have too many cases to be able to deal with specifics. I have to hark back to my own case in 2001, when I was convicted of a crime that happened in London, apparently, when I was in New York. Now, the problem with this was that during the trial, we proved not once but twice that the dates on the indictment of when I'd committed this crime cannot be correct, because I was somewhere in another country or there was some other reason. On one of them, it was one of my TV shows that had been aired. The guy rushed up to me to tell me how much he loved the TV show, and we could prove, or we did easily prove, that it hadn't actually aired until a year later. So this person, this liar's information, this liar's claims went from him being 13 to him being 14 to him being 15. They changed the dates again and again. And the third time they changed the dates, I said to my defence lawyers, excuse me, can we please have a few days off to find whether or not I've got an alibi for this next 4-day period? The judge said no, the prosecution were allowed to change the dates on the indictment. I was not allowed any time to find my new alibi, which later on I did discover I had. I was in New York, which meant the man was over 16 when he claimed, or would have been over 16 when he claimed I would have abused him. It's just such bollocks. It's called inadequate representation at trial, and it applies to so many different cases, including my own. A victim bites back, falsely accused. See you next time round.